Welcome to Heart Over Gold, the channel where love, kindness, and humanity shine brighter than any fortune. In today's story, Amelia Carter went into labor expecting her husband, Richard, by her side, but he was with his mistress, Alana. Morris. Alone, Amelia gave birth to her son, Ethan, never knowing that Richard's betrayal would soon bring karma straight to his door. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments, and keep up with our latest stories. The monitor ticked steadily as Clara clenched her jaw. She sat alone in a white hospital room, where the silence pressed heavier than the waves of pain that racked her body. Far away, Alexander was raising a glass with another woman, unaware, perhaps unwilling to care about what was happening. No flowers, no calls, no comforting hand to hold hers. Just the resolve forming in her heart. Never again would she wait for love from a man who couldn't show up when it mattered most. And when Alexander returned, expecting life to carry on as usual, he would be met by a reality that neither his wealth nor his arrogance could erase. This wasn't revenge. It was survival. It was about love not for him, but for herself, her child, her family. The spring sun lit up Madrid that day, but inside Clara's penthouse the air was dense and suffocating. Through the tall glass windows, Retiro Park stretched in bright green, hues beneath the flawless sky. Yet no view, no silence, no scent of fresh coffee could calm her racing heart. 9 months pregnant, she shifted uncomfortably on the linen sofa, her hand moving over her swollen belly. Mateo stirred within her as if sensing something unsettled. From the bedroom came Alexander's firm steps across the wood floor, the low rumble of his voice as he closed zippers and spoke in his business tone. After 6 years of marriage, Clara knew his rhythms too well. How his eyes flickered a fraction before he lied. How his silences spoke louder than his words. The pregnancy had sharpened her instincts, and she could no longer brush aside what she felt. When Alexander finally emerged, he was immaculate in a dark blue suit, his hair groomed with precision, his watch gleaming. He looked exactly like the confident man on magazine covers. He handed her coffee with a rehearsed smile. "For you, darling," he said. Taking the seat across from her, Clara accepted the cup, though her stomach was tight with unease. For days, a knot had weighed inside her, not from pregnancy, but from truth she didn't want to face. "What time is your flight?" she asked evenly. "An hour and a half. I'll go straight from here in the company car. Private jet to Copenhagen. Key investor meeting. I'll be back before the weekend. Promise." She nodded, but watched the way his eyes darted, too quick, too careful. "And who exactly are you meeting?" she asked softly. "The Danish team and a Norwegian fund," he replied without missing a beat. Yet the glance he shot at her was too sharp, too defensive. Clara had once believed every word. Now she saw the cracks. Alexander crouched in front of her, gripping her hands with theatrical tenderness. "If you feel any real contractions, call me. I'll turn the plane around. I swear it." She searched his face for something real, as she had so many times before when she'd defended him to her sister Lucy, when she'd ignored strange perfumes on his shirts or sudden shifts in mood. But this morning, something inside her gave way. "Okay," she whispered. He kissed her forehead, stood, and picked up his leather briefcase. "I love you," he said as he walked out. "I love you too," Clara murmured, though the words felt hollow, ash on her tongue. When the door clicked shut, the penthouse sank back into silence. Clara sat frozen, clutching the warm coffee like an anchor before setting it down. Slowly, she walked to her desk, opened her laptop, and typed "Private Flight Tracking Spain." Her pulse spiked as the results loaded. Alexander's company jet wasn't headed to Copenhagen. It was bound for Malaga. The word landed like a slap. Malaga luxury hotels, infinity pools, lovers' escapes. Not business, never business. Matteo twisted inside her belly, responding to her turmoil. This time I'll know the truth, she thought. It wasn't jealousy. It was dignity. She sent one message. Lucy, come over, urgent. Her sister always knew when to show up. Minutes later, the first contraction hit her like lightning sharp, deep, undeniable. Matteo was on his way, and Alexander was gone. The doorbell rang. Lucy arrived, damp from the drizzle, bag slung over her shoulder, concern etched across her face. Tell me I'm wrong. Clara gasped through another contraction. Lucy didn't waste words. She helped her sister to her feet. How far? Apart. 3 minutes. Then let's move. Taxi's waiting. As they rode down the elevator, Lucy scrolled through her phone with furious speed. Clara watched, knowing exactly what she was searching for. Then Lucy froze. You've got to be kidding me. She held up her screen. It was an Instagram story. From Natalie Rivers, Alexander's assistant. Champagne glasses glinting beside an infinity pool. Sunlight spilling over bougainvillea. 2 pairs of feet dipping in the water. Alexander's Clara knew them better than her own. Her stomach twisted with betrayal so sharp it stole her breath. Another contraction hit, this one mingling with the raw ache of being abandoned. In the taxi, Lucy gripped her hand. He thinks he's untouchable, but he isn't. At Ruba International Hospital, nurses swept Clara into action. Lucy never left her side, phone buzzing with messages to Isabel Ferrer, to press contacts, to anyone who could turn this betrayal into exposure. Did he answer? Clara asked between gasps. Voicemail, Lucy said tightly. Every time, another surge of pain tore through her. The monitor beeped urgently. Nurses hurried in. Clara closed her eyes, rage and grief merging with the contractions. Lucy scrolled. Again, then showed her another video. This one clear as day, Alexander and Natalie together in Malaga. The proof Clara had dreaded, yet expected. Her scream tore through the delivery. Rumor sound of agony and rebirth all at once. The betrayal was carved into her bones, but so was her resolve. Lucy bent close, gripping her hand. Forget him. He doesn't exist now. It's you and Matteo. That's all that matters. We'll handle the rest. Clara stared into her sister's fierce eyes, drawing strength. A contraction surged. She bore down, her body reclaiming its power. Tell Isabel, she rasped. I want everything. No more lies. Lucy nodded, already typing. The doctor entered calmly as Clara's cries filled the room. It wasn't just birth. It was the start of something new. Pain, yes, but also a woman reborn. She spoke to Clara in a soft voice. Come on, Mrs. Valdez, it's time to push. Your son is almost here. Clara closed her eyes, and when she did, she realized something. She wasn't just going to push her son in Teeth World. She was also leaving behind the old Clara, the wife who kept silent, the woman who waited, the one who justified everything. That Clara was staying behind. The new one was being born now, along with her son, forged by betrayal, galvanized by a mother's righteous fury. Outside, the rain was stopping. The sky over Madrid was opening in clear streaks. and the storm now was her thizzlant war. While Clara fought to bring a new life into the world, Lucy was planting the seed of a silent war. In the hallway outside, the delivery room, with the footsteps of nurses in the background and the intermittent beeping of monitors, Lucy paced back and forth like a caged lion. The phone in her hand vibrated with notifications, but she knew who she had to contact at that moment. She dialed a number she had saved with a simple shark emoji. On the other end, a calm voice, low and firm. She answered immediately. Isabel Ferres. With whom do I have the pleasure? Lucy Valdez. Clara Valdez's sister. My sister is in labor right now. Her husband, Alexander Fuentes, is in Marba with his personal assistant. We have proof. There was a brief pause. Then Isabel's voice took on a different nuance. Professional, sharp. Continue. We have a screenshot of Natalie Rivers' public Instagram story with GL location. A private flight record from Nurax to Malaga. Screenshots of messages and audios. And above all, we have African woman giving birth. Alone. Clara wants to initiate legal action. Understood. Does he know you know? No. We'll continue to play along with the Copenhagen story. Perfect. Lucy stopped in front of the hallway vending machine. She wasn't hungry, but she needed something to chew on so she wouldn't scream. The sound of the elevator opening made her turn, but it wasn't anyone she recognized. Can you send everything to the email address I'm going to give you? Isabel asked calmly. My legal team will get started as soon as we receive the documentation. Lucy took a folder from her backpack. She always carried paper backups, like a good journalist. She quickly scanned those documents with an app and sent them while she was talking. Can you activate precautionary measures? If what you tell me is corroborated, and from what I see, it will be. Yes, we will initiate a divorce lawsuit for aggravated adultery, a request for a restraining order, and a precautionary freeze of marital assets. As soon as he sets foot in Bar, he will be trapped. Lucy smiled without joy. That's what we want. For him to have no way out. The lawyer paused. Then her voice lowered, almost confidential. Tell your sister not to contact him. Not a message, not a call. Absolute silence. Let him believe that everything is still the same. That way, the fall will be more effective. She's in the delivery room. She has no mind to write to him right now, but I'll remind her. Isabel ended the conversation with a dry phrase. In less than an hour, you'll have our fee agreement in your mail. My team is already tracing properties, accounts, and movements. Let them enjoy his last hours of peace. Lucy hung up and put her phone away with hands that were still tense. She took a deep breath. She forced herself to relax. She looked out the hallway window. The sky over Madrid was still grey, but in the distance, a small, clear patch was opening. Up at that moment, a nurse came out of the room. She had a professional but gentle expression. Family of Clara Valdez. Lucy immediately approached. How is everything going? She's in active labor. She's being strong. The baby is doing well. It will be a matter of an hour, maybe less. Lucy nodded and let herself fall into one-offed seats in the hallway. She sat looking at the floor, the grey lines of the marble, and thought of her sister, of the years she had watched her give up herself for that marriage. Clara Alwazo, proper, so elegant, so willing to give the benefit of the doubt. But that was over. She took out her phone again. She went to Natalie's profile. She knew that that woman couldn't resist visibility. She almost expected there to be more proof, and there they were. An old post in which she referred to Alexander as my tigress mentor, a comment with a double meaning. Photos at company events where Shieldways stood by his side. Lucy saved it all. It wasn't just a divorce. It was a cleansing, a rebuilding. An hour later, the email notification vibrated on her screen. It was Isabel Ferrer's contract, scanned and digitally signed. Attached were also the letter of intent. For the court, the drafts of precautionary measures, and a list of assets registered in Alexander Fuentes' name. Lucy would forward it to Clara later. For now, her sister had to focus on bringing Mateo into the world. From the other side of the wall, a muffled, deep sound came. A long cry, a mixture of pain and power. Lucy stood up immediately. That's my sister, she thought, and no one will ever break her again. In the silence of the hallway, with the footsteps of nurses and the distant murmur of the city on the other side of the glass, Lucy felt that something had changed, that Clara was no longer the woman who had looked at her with insecure eyes a few hours ago. Something in her had awakened, and that new Clara was going to be a hurricane. When Alexander returns to Madrid, he will not find a house, a wife, or a reputation, the king's fall. Alexander turned to Madrid with a flower in his hand and a well-rehearsed lie on his tongue. On board his private jet, he had gone over the perfect speech again and again. That the meeting in Copenhagen had been extended longer than expected, that he had lost reception, that he barely had time to sleep. He carried a cheap snow globe from the Oslo airport in his briefcase as proof of that technical stop. He had even ordered white flowers for Clara. He planned Toriv at the hospital, kiss her on the forehead, apologize for his absence. His son, as if nothing had happened. The private runway at Barajas Airport looked quiet as evening fell. The jet taxied slowly toward the hangar. Alexander adjusted his tie and combed his hair with his fingers. He hadn't slept well for days, not out of remorse, but from the effort of covering every trace. He had deleted all of Natalie's photos, cleared the hotel reservations, and deactivated the location tags. In his mind, he was still in control. When the plane stopped, the staircase was deployed. Alexander descended with a firm step, his jacket slung over his shoulder, confident in himself. A few feet away, a black sedan was waiting for him on the runway. He assumed it was his usual driver, but when he approached, he realized that the person waiting for him wasn't Francisco. A short woman with grey hair pulled back in, an impeccable bun, a pearl grey pantsuit, and an imperturbable expression watched him attentively. By her side, two suited men, large Aspelar, stood firm. She took a step forward. "Mr. Alexander Fuentes," she said in a clear voice without raising it. "Yes," he replied, disconcerted. "Who are you? Where is my driver? My name is Isabel Ferrer, EOM, the lawyer for your wife, Clara Valdez." A slight shiver ran down Alexander's spine. The name was not unknown to him. Isabel Ferrer was a feared figure in Madrid's legal circles. The press nicknamed her the Iron Judge. Although she was never a judge, she simply won, always. "I don't understand." He tried to smile, gesturing with the hand that held the snow globe. "I just got back. My wife is in labor. I was coming from work. I've been in Oslo, we know." Isabel interrupted him in a neutral, almost bored tone. "In fact, we have proof that your jet was not in Copenhagen or Oslo until after it landed in Malaga. We know everything." One oft bodyguard stepped forward and handed him a thick manila envelope. Alexander took it with hands that were beginning to tremble. What is this? A divorce lawsuit for adultery, a temporary restraining order on marital assets, and a court order that prevents you from entering the residence in the Salamanca neighborhood. From this moment on, you must not approach your wife or your son or the property, nor can you move any assets until further notice. Alexander opened his mouth, but no words came out. The snow globe hung useless from his right hand. This must be a mistake. Clara wouldn't do this. You have profoundly underestimated the woman you married, Isabel replied. You thought she was an elegant decoration. You were wrong. She's the queen, and you have been cast out of the kingdom. Behind them, a double-click, a photographer hidden in the distance captured the scene, and next to him, standing impotent, Lucy Valdez raised her phone as if she were toasting with him. Then she turned and disappeared. Alexander took a step back, confused, looking for air. You can't do this to me, he murmured, pathetic even to his own ears. Of course we can, Isabel replied, already turning toward the sedan. In fact, it's already done. I recommend you get in that car. One of my assistants will take you to the hotel of your choice. In the meantime, your board of directors has already received a copy of this packet. Good luck. One of the men opened the back door. Alexander had no choice. He got in. The leather of the seat was cold. The manila envelope on his legs seemed to weigh a ton. He opened it. Irreconcilable differences, emotional cruelty, aggravated adultery. Attached were a flight log, a bill from the Marba Hotel, and finally, a high-definition screenshot of the Instagram video. His feet and Natalis intertwined in the pool. The caption, Paradise. The car started without a word. Outside, twilight was falling over Madrid. Alexander looked out the window, his breathing, his whole plan, his whole image, his control had evaporated. He was no longer a king returning to his castle. He was a man sitting in the back seat of a car with a useless globe eye in his hand, and his reputation in tatters. At that moment, he understood that this time he had lost, and the real battle hadn't even begun. The aftermath. News travels faster than private jets, and Alexander no longer had anywhere to hide. It was barely dawn in Madrid, and the headline was already on everyone's lips. CEO abandons his pregnant wife for a romantic getaway in Marba. The news had exploded like a bomb in all national media. The country carried eaten its digital front pages. The world opened its economy section with the Fallon Narok shares and even the morning. Public television shows commented on the scandal with a cocktail of indignation and morbid curiosity. On social media, Alexander Fuentes' name was an absolute trend accompanied by hashtags like hatched, parting betrayal, and hashtag justice for Clara at Marac's headquarters. Right on the Po de la Castellana, the atmosphere wasted. The hallways were silent. Employees who used to exchange jokes at the coffee machine avoided looking at each other. The private elevator that went up to the executive floor rose more slowly than usual, as if it knew what was about to happen. Alexander, with deep, dark circles under his eyes and a pale face, entered through the back door off the building, wearing dark glasses and a poorly adjusted tie. He had spent the night in a discreet suite at the Palace Hotel, alone, surrounded by legal papers and bottles of sparkling water. His phone didn't stop vibrating with calls from journalists, messages from former partners, and Twitter notifications. He didn't answer any of them. He knew he couldn't control what was coming, but he at least wanted to talk to the board for others did. But it was already too late. As soon as he entered the meeting room, he found all the board members sitting waiting for him in silence. Some with a grave expression, other so trite furious. "Gentlemen, good morning," Alexander began, trying to sound serene. "I understand that the current situation requires an explanation. Allow me to put everything in context." They didn't let him continue. "Context," interrupted the chairwoman of the board, a middle-aged woman with a firm voice. "After your personal life turns into a reputation crisis that has caused our shares to fall by 18% in 2 days. Another member held up his phone. It is true that he charged the hotel expenses in Marba through a shell company, Linketto Narox. Alexander tried to smile, a gesture more like a grimace. "It's an accounting, something I will personally review. And the video, is that also an error?" another asked, ironically. The silence was thick as oil. Alexander knew he was losing control, the same control he had always boasted about. That aura of infallibility was slipping through his fingers. He tried to change the focus. "The technology we have built is still solid. This doesn't affect the product. It's a passing storm. The storm may pass, but not with you." The chairwoman said, "We need to send a clear message to the market. The board has decided by a majority that you take an indefinite leave, effective immediately." There was no discussion. Alexander understood that he had no choice. It wasn't even a formal expulsion. It wasn't me, more elegant, more lethal, silent exile. He left the building through the same back door where a cloud of photographers was, already waiting with cameras ready. A security guard escorted him to the car. He didn't say anything. He didn't look at him. Their respect that had once surrounded him had evaporated. Meanwhile, just a few miles away, in the penthouse in the south neighborhood, Clara held Matteo in her arms. The child was sleeping with his mouth slightly open, his tiny fists clenched, completely oblivious to the storm that was swirling around his existence. Clara was sitting by the window in cottona, pajamas with a soft blanket over her legs. Next to her, on the low table, a tablet showed the news. There was no sound. It wasn't necessary. The image were enough. Alexander leaving the airport with a haggarded face. The photos of the hotel. Isabel Ferrer's legal statements, and even a brief interview with Lucy, who had simply said, "My sister is not alone, and Shay's not going to stay silent." Clara didn't smile. She didn't feel victorious. She felt peace, a serene, firm peace, born from pain, but settled in something deeper. There was no revenge in her eyes, only determination. The tablet vibrated. It was a new email from Isabel. The subject. Line read, "Vald's Foundation. Registration approved." Clara opened it and read I-10 silence. The ministry had officially approved the creation of the Valdez Foundation, whose purpose would be to offer legal and psychological assistance to women who were victims of economic, emotional, or social abuse by their partners. Its first office would be in Chamber. It had enough funds to operate for at least 5 years without the need for external donations. Clara looked at Matteo, his tiny fingers closed around hers with unexpected strength. "Everything is going to be all right," she whispered. "I promise." At that moment, Lucy entered the living room with a tray of coffee and toast with olive oil and tomato. She placed them on the table and sat down beside her. "Have you seen it?" "Yes." "Do you feel better?" "It's not Abu thought." "I feel free," Lucy nodded. Then she held out a cup of coffee. "Let's toast," she said, raising it slightly to the beginning of the end. Outside, Madrid continued with its routine. Trams passed. People strolled through Torero. The markets opened their doors. The city remained firm, just like Clara, just like Her new life would. A new fight. For years of silence can seem like an eternity until the past comes knocking on your door. It was a quiet autumn afternoon in Madrid. The orange leaves crunched underfoot on the sidewalk, and the pale grey sky seemed to hold a long contained breath. In the main office of the Valdez Foundation, located on a quiet street in Chambéry, Clara was reviewing a particularly delicate file. It was the case of a woman from Andalusia who was fighting for custody of her children against a powerful and manipulative ex-husband. The story felt painfully familiar. The office smelled of freshly brewed coffee and new paper. Mateo, now almost 4 years old, was at school, and Clara took advantage of the morning hours to work in peace. She wore a light cardigan and a simple blouse, her hair in a relaxed bun. She seemed at peace, and in a way she was, until her phone rang. It was Isabel Ferrer. Yes, Clara answered serenely. He's back, the lawyer said bluntly. Clara fell silent, the pen suspended in the air. Where? He landed this morning in Barajas. He's already in Madrid. His lawyers have contacted me. Alexander wants to request visitation rights. The words floated in the air like sharp glass. Clara closed her eyes and forced herself to breathe. For 4 years, Alexander had not sent a single postcard, not a single call, not a single birthday present for his son. He had signed the divorce agreement without a fight and had disappeared like a shadow. Now he was returning, and he wanted to see Mateo. What arguments are they presenting? She asked in a controlled voice. The usual, Isabel said, with a hint of annoyance. He claims he has changed, that he has been rehabilitated, that he feels profound remorse, that he wants to get back the relationship with his son before it's too late. Clara placed the pen on the table gently. I guess his business ventures in Dubai didn't work out as he expected. Exactly, Isabel confirmed. My sources say he lost capital in a startup that didn't take off. He's far from bankruptcy, but he's no longer on his golden Olympus. And, as often happens with men who lose power, they look back for some way to regain it. Clara didn't respond immediately. She stood up and walked to the window. She watched the branches of a plane tree shake in the wind. In the reflection of the glass, she saw her own face, more serene, firmer than it had been years ago. He's not going to get it from me, she finally said, or from my son. Fight him, Isabel. Use everything we have. Of course, the lawyer replied. But you must prepare yourself. He'll try to go to the media. He'll want to present himself as a repentant father, a victim of the system, and you, as the cold woman prevents him from seeing his son. Clara took a deep breath. It didn't hurt her. Alexander had always known how to manipulate narratives, but this time she was not the same. When she hung up, she remained silent for a moment, processing the information. Then the office door opened and Lucy appeared, her expression alert. Isabel called me. Do you know already? Clara nodded. Yes, he's back. Lucy closed the door behind her and sat down opposite, resting her elbows on the table. He has no shame. For years without showing up, and now he wants to pose as a model father. I know, Clara said, but it's not going to be easy. If he moves cunningly, he can win sympathy. People forget quickly. Lucy snorted. So, what are we going to do? Clara looked up. There was no longer any doubt in her eyes, only determination, whatever it takes. Minutes later, she was in her penthouse in the Salamanca neighborhood, reviewing old digital folders on her laptop. Everything was well archived. Divorce documents, statements, flight logs, screenshots. It wasn't revenge she was looking for, It was foresight, protection for her and for Matteo. The next day, upon picking up her son from school, she ran into Amatha from the parents' group. She asked casually if it was true that Mattia's father had returned. Clara smiled politely but did not answer. It wasn't time to go into battle, not yet. That night, while Matteo coloured on the living room table with markers, Clara served him a glass of milk with cookies. The boy, without looking up, showed her his drawing. 3 stick figures, holding hands, and a bright sun above. "Who are they, sweetheart?" she asked tenderly. "You Aunt Lucy, and me," the little one replied naturally. Clara hugged him tightly. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The family was already complete, and she would not allow anyone to come and break it. It's no longer about him. It's about us. The television stage. A camera turned on can change public opinion or expose your empty soul. The set of the public channel was decorated with neutral colors, warm light, and instrumental background music. Everything was calculated to inspire trust, closeness, emotion. The host, a woman with a kind smile and compassionate eyes, looked at her guest attentively as the cameras filmed insolence. Sitting across from her, dressed in a dark suit without a tie, was Alexander Fuentes, thinner than he had been years ago, with disguised dark circles under his eyes and a carefully controlled demeanor. The repentant magnate was back. "Thank you for joining us tonight," the journalist said. "We know it hasn't been easy for you to take this step." Alexander nodded with a measured smile. "Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I think it's important to speak from the heart when you have nothing left to lose." Clara watched everything from the sofa in her penthouse, with Matteo already asleep in his room. Lucy was sitting beside her, her arms crossed and one eyebrow raised. On the coffee table, the cups of chamomile tea were still steaming. The television showed a close-up of Alexander, his voice to his gaze full of what, at first glance, seemed like sincerity. "During these years," he said, "I have made mistakes, many, but the biggest one was moving away from my son. Not a day goes by that I don't regret it. I have watched him grow up alone in photographs, in press clippings, and each image has hurt me like a new wound." The host nodded with a pained expression. The background violins rose lightly in volume. "Do you think you still have time to rebuild that bond?" "I hope so. I ask for nothing more than a chance. I don't want to replace anyone, just to be present, to get to know him, to know what he likes, what he dreams about, to be a part, even if a small one, of his life." Lucy snorted. Clara continued to watch, without blinking. "He's rehearsed it," Lucy said. "Every word. It's brilliant. I admit it. He has just the right tone of vulnerability with seeming weak." Alexander continued, "I don't blame Clara. I know I made her suffer, and I understand if she holds a grudge, but I want her to know that I'm not here for me. I'm here for him." The camera made a slow pan over the host's face, her eyes already slightly moist. Some members of the audience applauded. Clara, without taking her eyes off the screen, reached out and took the remote control. She pressed the button, and the television went blank. Silence filled the room. "You don't want to watch the end?" Lucy asked. "I've already seen everything," Clara replied. "What comes next will be more of threesome." Lucy watched her. On her face there was no anger, no sadness. There was something more solid, a tense calm, the kind of serenity that precedes an irrevocable decision. At that moment, Clara's phone vibrated on the table. It was a message from Isabel Ferrer. "I expected this. Don't worry, I have a few things up my sleeve. We'll talk tomorrow. Clara read it and then showed it to her sister. Do you think it's what I think it is? Lucy smiled with a mixture of irony and relief. If what you think is a masterful twist, yes. The next morning, social media was divided. Many praised Alexander for his courage in exposing himself. Others recalled the pool video, the abandonment in the middle of childbirth, the 4-year disappearance. Some headlines were benevolent, their turn of a father. Others harsher, redemption or strategy. Clara did notice you any statements. She did not give interviews. She did not write a single line on social media. She continued with her routine. She took Matteo to Theratiro Park, where they played with dry leaves and laughed as the little one hung from the swings. Someone photographed them from a distance. The next day, a magazine published the image with the headline, "The Strong Mother." Clara Valdez responds with silence. That night on the terrace of the penthouse, while Matteo was sleeping, Clara and Lucy shared a glass of wine. "I told you so," Lucy commented. "He was going to try to manipulate the entire country." "Yes," Clara admitted, taking a slow sip. "But what he doesn't know is that now I'm not alone. Not even in my defense." Lucy raised her glass to Isabel Ferrand, her ace up her sleeve. Clara gently clinkered at her glass with her sister sand to what's to come. Somewhere in the city, Alexander was celebrating the good reception of his interview with his new lawyer. But he still didn't know that the real blow would not come from the media or from the public, but from the past. Isabel calls tomorrow, and when she does, nothing will ever be the same again. The final verdict: there ever be trails that burn and others that redeem. The Madrid family court stood sober and cold under the cloudy November sky. The worn stone steps, the imposing columns, and the main entrance flanked by guards seemed more intimidating than usual. The media crowded the sidewalk, microphones ready, cameras on. It wastes trial everyone was waiting for. Alexander Fuentes, the disgraced former magnate, faced Clara Valdez for the right to see his son, Matteo. The room was austere with polished wooden benches and white lighting that did not forgive wrinkles or tense expressions. Clara was sitting next to Isabel Ferrer, dressed in a dark blue suit and a cream-colored blouse. Her face was serene, but her hands clasped in her lap betrayed her internal tension. On the other side, Alexander maintained a contrite posture in a light grey suit and a folder of documents in front of him. His lawyer, a young man with the air of a rising star, whispered instructs in his ear. The judge, a woman in her 60s with short hair and dreading glasses, opened the session with a firm voice. "We are here to hear the request of Mr. Alexander Fuentes regarding visitation rights for his minor son, Matteo Fuentes Valdez. The defendant, Clara Ara Valdez, is present and represented by her lawyer, Ms. Isabel Ferrer. Let's begin." Alexander's lawyer took Thefla. In a temperate voice, he spoke of reflection, of past mistakes, of their redemption, of a man who had hit rock bottom and wanted to reconnect with his son. He showed photographs of Alexander at recent charity events, a handwritten letter addressed to Matteo, and even a psychological report that certified his recovered emotional maturity. "My client is not looking to intrude," he concluded. "He only wishes to get to know the child he brought into the world. He is willing to begin with supervised visits without disrupting that child's stability." The judge nodded slightly and looked toward Isabel Ferrer. "Ms. Ferrer." Isabel stood up with the air of someone who plans every move weeks in advance. "Your Honor, we are not going to deny the facts. Mr. Fuentes is the biological father of Mateo, but he is not Thefaha, who has been present. He has shown no interest, no affection, and no responsibility for the past 4 years. During that time, Mateo has been resid with love, stability, and an emotional structure that does not include Mr. Fuentes. And now that his public image has fallen, he intends to use this child Asa bridge to redemption. The judge took notes without changing her expression. Isabel took a deep breath and looked directly at Alexander. But there is a thing more, she added. A testimony that dismantles any narrative of pretense. She turned toward the courtroom door. It opened, and a woman entered who made Alexander's face instantly pale. Natalie Rivers. She was dressed soberly in a beige suit without flashy makeup, her hair pulled back in a low bun. She walked with a firm step without looking at her former lover. She sat down in front of the judge, and after swearing to tell the truth, she began to speak. During my relationship with Mr. Fuentes, I was a direct witness to his opinions about his unborn child. I heard him refer to the pregnancy as a complication and say that a child would only bring distraction to his professional life. On multiple occasions, he assured me that he did not plan to be present at the birth, that it was a formality that be dispensed with. She presented archived conversations, message screenshots, even a confidentiality agreement that he had asked her to sign when their relationship ended in exchange for a considerable sum. I have come here because, after these years, and now that I have my own family, I cannot remain silent. A child is not atrophy to clean up mistakes. It is a life, and it does not deserve to be used as a public excuse. The entire room fell silent. Clara did not look at Alexander. She just lowered her head slightly, as if finally a heavy weight had been lifted from her back. Isabel, for her part, maintained her expression intact. The judge took a few minutes to read the documents presented. Then she looked up and addressed Alexander. Mr. Fuentes, according to the law, you have the right to request visitation. But you also have the duty to demonstrate a real, sustained, and respectful commitment to the Manos' well-being. What I have seen here is not that. I've seen an attempt to clean up a public image, not to rebuild a family relationship. Alexander looked down. The request for visitation is denied, the judge declared, and my advice is that you accept the consequences of your actions and leave this family in peace. The sound of the gavel hitting the table was dry and definitive. Outside the courtroom, the photographers were waiting. But Clara did not stop. She walked out, flanked by Isabel and Lucy, her step firm, her gaze forward. She did not offer any words. She did not need to. For an instant, her gaze crossed with Alexander's, still standing next to the witness stand. She saw him defeated, not repentant, just furious. And alone, Clara did not flinch. That night at home, while Mateo slept, Clara poured 2 glasses of wine and sat down next to Lucy on the terrace. You know what Theba's part of it all was? Lucy asked, smiling. That the winning card was her, Natalie. Clara nodded, raising her glass. People change, or maybe they just get it of the lies. And for the first time in years, she toasted not to having one, but to having protected what she loved most. A luminous scar he has lost, and we no longer look back. Peace doesn't always come with silence. Sometimes it comes with the firm voice of a mother who no longer doubts. It was a Sunday morning in Madrid. Their clear blue sky, the gentle spring sun filtering through the balconies of the Salamanca neighborhood, the streets still quiet, the cafes just beginning to set up tables outside, and the aroma of toast with olive oil and tomato floating in the air. In Clara Valdez's penthouse, the day began with a new but deeply symbolic ritual. Mateo, now a full 4 years old, ran back and forth in his astronaut costume. He had decided that day he wanted to travel to the moon from the living room. Lucy followed him with a broomstick that served as etiquette as she laughed out loud. Clara watched them from the open kitchen, preparing breakfast with calm movements. Her hair was in a low braid, and she wore a light robe over her linen dress. On her face, for the first time in a long time, there was not a trace of tension. On the dining table, a black folder was waiting. Inside the complete court resolution, Natalie's statements, though documents that legally protected Mateo. But it was not what Clara was looking at with attention. On top of the folder, there was a new page, a formal request for a change of last name. Mateo would soon be named Mateo Valdez, and that was all. The doorbell rang softly. Lucy went to open it and returned, accompanied by Isabel Ferrer, always impeccable, this time with a wine-colored scarf and a warmer smile than usual. "Am I just in time for coffee?" she asked lightly. "Always," Clara replied, pouring her a cup. The three of them sat down, while Mateo built his lunar rocket with cushions. Isabel placed an envelope on the table. "This just arrived from the ministry. Approved. The change of last name will be official in 3 weeks." Clara nodded. She did not celebrate with words. She just closed her eyes for a second. A cycle was closing. One that begun with pain, and that was now ending with clarity. "And him?" Lucy asked. "Alexander left Madrid yesterday," Isabel replied. "He went back to Dubai. Apparently, he has a new technology project, but the local press is no longer following him. He's out of the spotlight, alone." There was a brief silence, not uncomfortable, but respectful, as if they all understood that that story, although not named, was no longer a part of their lives. "I don't feel hatred," Clara suddenly murmured. "And that's what surprises me the most. I'm not happy about his fall. I'm happy about a new life." Lucy took her hand for a moment. Isabel nodded with a serene gesture. "It's because you no longer need to hate. You are already free." A few hours later, they went out together to Retiro Park. It was a day for families, for children on bicycles, for elderly people walking slowly, for soft street music at the entrance to the resort. Clara held Mateo's hand while he pointed to every dog, every bird, every fallen leaf, as if it were the first time had seen them. When they got to the pond, they sat on a bench. Mateo ate anise cream, and Clara watched him in silence. "You know," she said, not looking at Tanyan in particular, "for a long time I thought that motherhood was something I had to prove, that I had to be perfect, silent, balanced, like a statue. But now I understand that's not it. That being a mother is also crying with your child, laughing for no reason, losing your mind sometimes, and still moving forward." Lucy looked at her with a luminous smile. "You are the best mother Mateo could have, because you choose him every day, and because you choose yourself too." As night fell back at home, Clara received an unexpected email. It came from a journalist from El País requesting an interview. Not to talk about scandals, it said, but to get to know the woman who rebuilt her world. Clara read it calmly, then marked it as read and did not respond. She didn't need to tell anything more. Her story was already told where it mattered. In the hugs of her son, in the knowing look of her sister, in the security of her home. That night, before going to bed, Mateo got into his mother's bed with a book in his hand. Read to me, Mummy. Clara looked at him, pushed a lock of hair off his forehead, and nodded. Of course, my love. Which own do you want? This one, he said, pointing to one about space. Clara opened the book and began to read in a soft voice. As she did, she thought about everything she had left behind. The tears, the doubts, the betrayal, and above all, the fear. She was no longer afraid of the past. She had faced each chapter by chapter, and she had overcome it. When Matteo fell asleep, she stayed a few more minutes by his side. She caressed his forehead and whispered something that he didn't need to understand now, but that he would remember someday. You are the beginning of all the good that came after. And as she turned off the light, Clara knew that the real journey was not the one that had begun with Alexander Boutet, one that continued now only with Matteo, with Lucy, with everything she chose to build from love. The past no longer hurts because the present